Good afternoon. My name is Larry Page. I'm talking to you from Vancouver, and the company that we're presenting today is Southern Silver Exploration Corporation, which is developing properties in New Mexico and specifically Mexico, Durango, Mexico. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. I'm not a geologist, and therefore I'm not going to do the conventional way of going through a deck and showing you assays and discuss various types of metals, exploration and mining methods, or anything of that nature. I've been in this business a long time, some 5 decades. For the last 10, 15, 20 years, I guess it is, I've been operating under Mannix Resource Group out of Vancouver. It manages the affairs of 5 issuers that are exploring in British Columbia, Nevada, New Mexico, Mexico, and currently Brazil. Rather than tell you why Southern Silver is going to be transitioning from one of the largest silver development projects in the world to a mine with specific reference to assays, etc. I thought it might be useful because I expect that you're watching a number of these presentations, and people are going through decks. The first thing they do is look at the exculpatory words at the beginning. I will be making some aspirational comments. If I didn't, I should be fired. But I'm not going to do a lot of that. What would be interesting, I think, is I jotted down the ingredients for a successful public exploration or mining company. A lot of people that I talk to, they say, well, why should I buy your shares rather than somebody else's shares? You're both penny dreadfuls. You're a risky venture. And so what I'd like to demonstrate to you in the 10 minutes that I have is how to assess a risk to de-risk a project. And those items are, and I'll be referring to them as they're in no particular order of importance, is the location of the property, the climate that the property is in, government jurisdiction, infrastructure, and then dealing with the property itself is the degree of ownership, whether there's a fractional ownership or whether, as in this case, Southern Silver owns 100% of the mineral rights on both properties that we're going to talk about. Something else that is important is property burdens. Are there royalties on the property or net profit interest or anything else that would impact the bottom line, so that when a major is looking at the project and they assess what they're going to have to pay out off the top on a continuous basis, it makes the property less valuable. The other thing to think about is the property size. Is it a district scale? Is there room for expansion? Is there room to have a 10 to 20 to 30 mine life because additional exploration which can take place in development once a mine is up and running can be done relatively cost effective. And so you have to have a look at that. The next is a commodity. My old mentor used to say, don't try to sell the customers blue ties when they want red ties. In other words, if I was presenting to you a commodity that's in little demand, you'd be well served to turn me off. In this case, this is a silver property in a silver district, and in New Mexico, it's essentially a porphyry copper property in a copper district. So you look at that, and then look at the people. Do the people have the experience and the capability to take a exploration property through the continuum to become a mine. And so you look at the experience of the geologists, whether they're exploration geologists or development geologists. Do they have the experience to do the job properly? Then they hand over to mining engineers, and that's always a difficult transition because they don't get along. But the mining engineers are the ones who have to three-dimensionally think about how to get the ore out of the ground. So you have to see whether or not the company that's presenting to you has that sort of capability. And then financial folks, that's the commodity that keeps the project running. Juniors are either finishing a financing or they're starting a financing, and they're looking for speculative money and then ultimately development money. And so you look at that to see what the track record of the people are that are behind the company. And then, of course, you have to look at the local workforce. If the property is to be brought in production, is there a workforce there that have the experience and the capability to become miners or to shift from one job to another and to do that? And then the last thing is, of course, market forces, and there's nothing that we can do about that, but we can try to take advantage of market forces. For instance, if you've been watching copper lately, it's trading appreciably above $4, and everybody's saying it's the metal that's going to drive the new green industry. So that's a market force that is important to pay attention to. It's the green ties, red ties again. So having said that, I'd like to demonstrate that and I'll be speaking primarily about Cerro Las Minitas. It's in Durango, Mexico. It's one of the largest and highest grade undeveloped silver projects in the world. And I'd like to tell you how we came about finding this property. About 11 years ago, we had in the Mannix Group a company called Western Silver. And Western Silver was a penny dreadful. It was drilling a property in Zacatecas, Mexico, and it developed that property to the stage where it was a very desirable property to be taken on by a major. Glamis Gold did a corporate takeover, which is one of the ways that juniors can give their shareholders a profitable exit. Glamis was taken over by Goldcorp. The transaction to the shareholders was worth $1.2 billion. And the shareholders, in a matter of a short period of time, had an ability to sell their shares for which they paid pennies for in excess of $35. In our company, we thought we would take advantage of usage of our human resources and our ability to operate in Mexico. We think we're well on our way to emulate the success that Western Silver had. And why I say that is that we found a property through the use of the Mexican geologist who had actually spudded in the discovery well at Penasquito. Through his connections, he found a property that had been amalgamated by a Mexican national. It was a series of small mines, hence the name Cerro Las Minitas, which is a hill of many mines. And we negotiated a transaction whereby over a period of some years, we could buy the property for $4 million without any burdens on it. We achieved that goal. We were helped in the raising of capital by Freeport-McMoRan, the largest copper miner in the world, which wanted to drill the property looking for a deep-seated porphyry. They found the presence of copper at depth, but not sufficient for their purposes, and they left Mexico and left us the property. We were then able to attract the Electrum group into becoming a shareholder, and they kept buying shares of successive equity raises that we're putting forward, and they own somewhere around 22-23% of our issued capital at the time. Partway through that transaction, they asked if they could become joint venture partners. They gave us $5 million to deploy as project managers, and they earned a 60% interest in the property. So that takes me to one of the ingredients here is degree of property ownership. When you're the operator, but you're the tail, you're not the dog, you're not calling the shots. In this case, Electrum wanted to move a little more slowly than we wanted to do. So mid-year last year, we made a deal to buy out their 60% working interest for $15 million US. We completed that transaction. We paid the bulk of the price, and we have one continuing obligation on September the 15th of this year to pay $4 million, half in cash and half in shares at the 20-day VWAP at the time of payment. So we succeeded in our goal, and we were assisted in that by a number of brokers and investors who assisted us in raising slightly in excess of $14 million. When the dust cleared after that was all over, we were masters of our own destiny, and we had the opportunity to proceed with drilling the project. We commissioned a 10-meter drill program, and the market liked what we did. If you look at this chart, you'll see that we traded in volume, and we traded in excess of the strike price of 20 cents for the warrants, and we're trading in the 45 to 55 range now on several million dollars or several million shares a day. So I think I can suggest to you that we've achieved what we want to achieve as far as the property ownership situation and raising capital to advance the property. I needn't go into that. I think it's salutary on this chart. I always like charts that end up high on the right-hand side. But I think this gives you an idea of we're in between the new discovery and the pre-feasibility stage of the development of any mineral property. This is, as I said, on the Western Silver Corporation. This is its chart, but it's salutary for us to look at that chart and say, are we going to get capital appreciation on our speculative securities by putting more money in the ground and advancing the property to the stage where third-party people will tell us it's feasible to turn this property into a mine. We're just shortly before the pre-feasibility stage on this chart. We have a resource which was published in 2019. We're in the midst of completion of a 20,000 meter drill program. That will be completed within the next month to month and a half. We'll have a preliminary economic assessment in the last of the fourth quarter of this year. My belief is that the market will look at all of these things and say the building blocks are all falling into place for us to take a very serious look at the company based upon the development of the Cerro Las Minitas property. I do also want to talk to you about the Oro property, and I'll get to that as we move along. So as we get into 2022, I believe that we'll be at the feasibility stage, and we'll be the pretty girl at the dance. The majors, many of whom have signed CAs with us and have been in our data room, will be looking to see how this asset fits into their portfolio, how they can put forward the CapEx and plan the OpEx to profitably take the ore out of the ground. So it's going to be an exciting 12 to 18 months for us, as we get to that end of the spectrum. Now, we're one of the top 10 of the multitude of juniors that are out there that are exploring for silver. We have, as of 2019, 272 million ounces of silver equivalent. And that's bringing the values of silver, lead, and zinc together and reporting in that way. This is the indicated and inferred mineral resource estimate. I might say that, and we'll get to the configuration of the property and the ore body, but there are 15 holes on the east side of the property which were not included in this mineral resource estimate. They led us to a drill program which is currently underway, and that is markedly going to add to the mineral resource estimate for the 2021 estimate when it's published. Our goal is to increase the 272 silver equivalent ounces to roughly 350 million silver equivalent ounces, which is a very robust resource upon which to found a very, very successful mine. Also, the commodity. The idea is if you're looking for silver, go to a place where other people are finding silver. If you're looking for copper, go to a place where people are mining for copper. You can see here the Arizona, the world famous Arizona copper mines are on that side of the border, and the Faja de Plata, the belt of silver, where all of the famous mines are, many of which are operational, are there. So there's the Oro and the Cerro Las Minitas. So go to a region where they welcome miners, where the legislation is such that there's not an onerous burden on people to come into a country to put in risk capital. And then you look at the climate. I spend an awful lot of money on companies investing or exploring in the Golden Triangle. Now, in British Columbia, we're very proud of the Golden Triangle, but you're there 3-4 months a year, and you're hiring helicopters, and then if you ever bring a mine into production, it's you're dealing with the climate. So if you can be in a climate where you can mine 365 days a year, you can explore 365 days a year, then in my experience, that's where you should be. You look at the government jurisdiction. Mining is such a major industry for the Mexican government that they welcome foreign investment into their communities, and they have very, very experienced miners, exploration companies, and all the support people that you need. So when you're in the exploration phase, when you're in the development phase, you can call upon locals to perform functions on a very cost-efficient basis, and repatriation of capital from the operations to the parent company follow well-trodden paths, and so we know what we're getting into. Another thing is you look at the property size. This is a plan of the local area. Durango is 70 kilometers away. The airport is 30-40 kilometers away. There's a rail line that runs through the property. There are power lines that run through the property. There's a autopista that runs through the property, and there's a local community, some 10,000 people that live in Guadalupe, Victoria, many of whom operate in the mines which are in the area. Hecla mining has been operating for some considerable time. We're told that it's one of their more successful and profitable mines. Avino's been in the area for decades, and they're doing extremely well now that silver prices are increasing. Core Mining, which is operating a mine up in Chihuahua as well as other areas in North America, has the La Preciosa property. You can see argonate gold and whatnot there, and then the big purple splotch here is owned by Fresnillo Pinoles, which is a grouping of Mexican companies, and they're developing on an exploration basis their property. So the hill is right here, and that's where we're developing. We'll get to that in just a moment. But we own all of the yellow area. We staked all of the CLM West prospect. We're just waiting for title to be issued. We're searching there for a different type of mineralization than what is at the Cerro. And so that's just an addition to what we might have. We know what we do have, and we know what we're developing at the Cerro. So dealing with all of that, we got a district scale situation. It may be attractive to Mexicans, it's attractive to North American companies, and we're, as I say, we're talking to what I euphemistically call the majors. Here's a Cerro. It's out in the middle of the bean fields, and it's basically when the Earth was being formed. It's just a mini eruption. Which contains minerals. It's been mined for over the last many decades by artisanal miners. All of these are mineral resources which have been discovered either by our predecessors or by ourselves. And it's easy to get to. It's a 10-minute drive from Guadalupe, where our offices are and our core shack and our infrastructure is. So again, it's location, and we're very pleased to be operating in that area. Now, I'm not a geologist. I'm not going to spend an awful lot of time on this, but this is a plan map of the bump, the Cerro, and how an intrusion way back when came up through the earth and brought with it minerals. That's as simplistic as I can be on geology. All of this area here, we explored and spent $28 million on exploring. And that became a resource which was published in 2019, and that's at 272 million silver equivalent ounces. We also had 15 holes over on the east side of the Cerro, but we had limited money at that stage, so we concentrated on this side. We did not include those 15 holes into this mineral exploration. But now that we own the property 100% and we're able to call our own shots and raise our own money and deploy the money, we've drilled all of these holes. And I'm not going to go into cross sections and assays, etc., except to say that this is where we expect to increase the 272 million silver equivalent ounces to in excess of 350 million. Now, there's another important issue here. This is all shallow mineralization. This is all sulfide mineralization. You have to go underground and you have to look for it, and you're there for 10, 15, 20 years. Some of the deepest mineralization is the richest, but it's going to take a long time to get to it. On this side, there's some very shallow mineralization that underlies some old workings. It deals with oxide mineralization that's been close enough to the surface to be oxidized, can be mined cheaply, and can be taken to the mill and can provide money in the near term to fund the larger larger development of the mine. All of this is on our website, so if you have a continuing interest after I finish speaking, or at any time, you can have a look at that and look at it in more details. We're always on the end of our email or a telephone, and if anybody has an interest in following up and wanting more information, happy to respond. So that's really why I suggest that you may want to take a flutter on Southern Silver, as I have. I expect to make a good deal of money on this company, as I did on Western Silver. But again, my old mentor used to say, never enter a room with only one door. And about 10, 12 years ago, a property was brought to us by a mining engineer that we've done a lot of work with over the past, an American national living in Santa Fe. And he said, there is a property that nobody can obtain because it consists of Bureau of Land Management, which is federal jurisdiction, state leases, and freehold land. And nobody knows who owns the freehold land, and it's a big district, and it's 22.4 square kilometers. I don't have enough time here to tell you how long it took to find the owner to buy the property, to stake the BLM land, to make a deal with the New Mexican government to acquire the state leases. We have it all now. We spent some $3 million on it. There are 5 historic mines on the property, silver-lead-zinc mines on the periphery of what is a deep-lying porphyry skarn zone. A couple of years ago, when we had some capital, we drilled some 1,000-foot holes, got to what we believe is the top of a system. In any event, we've watched the copper market. We believe that this is a hidden treasure that we're not getting any credit for. We've made application for and expect to receive permits within the next month or so. When the rainy season's over at the beginning of September, we'll deploy about a $2.5 to $3 million exploration program on this property, with a view to seeing if we can find the deep-seated porphyry. That give us some indication also of the peripheral silver-lead-zinc and gold. So that's the second door in the room that we've just entered. So I think my 10 minutes is essentially up. Here's a view taken by a airborne drone of the property. You can see the extent of the land that we hold the mineral rights to. We've done our deals with the ejidos, the local landowners, so that we have the rights to go onto the surface for exploration purposes. We have dealt with the government so that we have all of our exploration rights, and we have enough room to expand. So we think that we have satisfied all the ingredients to my little bake a cake situation here as to how you de-risk a property. We believe that this property is going to provide a good deal of wealth to our shareholders. It's going to do it in the medium term, and I invite you to invest with us. I think that I pretty much used up my 10 minutes, and so I'm going to try to see if I'm computer literate enough to quit. In any event, thank you for listening to me. Happy to speak with you on a one-to-one basis if you have a continuing interest. And keep watching the precious metals markets and specifically the copper market, because I think we're on to a good run. Thank you and goodbye.